Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Susan Kennedy Nur Al-Din, and today I'm going to talk to you about a lesser known contribution of Julian Assange, the Australian journalist and publisher of WikiLeaks. The WikiLeaks cables verified these other sources, but also proved that the size of the Erasure program was truly much larger than we could have ever imagined, and that the Arabian Gulf states and the United States of America were all complicit in the suppression of information about the program of administrative ethnic cleansing. Over time, the state pressured every individual of the entire Bedoon population of over 110,000 to comply with this erasure. It would take from 1983 to 2019, some 36 years, for the state security apparatus to carry out this plan, which constitutes a mass intergenerational psychological torture. The cable also referred to the passports the Bedoon were forced to acquire as fake passports, verifying that members of the government itself had asserted that the nationality of the Bedoons claimed by the state of Kuwait was fraudulent and totally ineffective in legal terms. Their supposed nationality from other states simply did not exist. The US Embassy analyst placed his trust in the Ministry of Interior's claim that the Bedoon had lied about their identity, yet the Ministry of Interior is the very agency that is carrying out the fraud and identity theft described in the cable by the pro-government MP Al-Khalifa, who objected to the program on moral grounds. The assessment by the analyst did not weigh the strength of each source of evidence. This is borne out by the fact that from 1960 until 2003, the state of Kuwait had never been able to show any proof whatsoever that the Bedoon had nationality in any other state. In the meantime, the state had continued to promise citizenship to the Bedoon in order to mislead them and to prevent them from asserting their rights. In 2003, 24,000 Bedoons had acquired passports in just 4 years as part of a process of narrative building to test the ethnic cleansing policy. My research indicates that the American government was likely aware the Bedoon were stateless from at least 1950 due to the nature of multilateral Middle East policies developed between all Middle East states, independent or under colonial rule, with the Arab League, UNESCO, World Health Organization and the World Bank in the 1950s and 1960s. Finally, in another point indicating that the state of Kuwait was only interested in mass human trafficking of the Bedoon, the cable cited that the state was willing to pay for the Bedoon population to migrate to underpopulated countries such as Australia or Canada. This policy is exactly the opposite of a policy introduced by Arab nationalists in the 1980s or earlier to import educated Arabs of other nationalities, members of their own ethnic groups, into Kuwait from other countries around the world, not only from the Middle East, but also from Western countries where they had already migrated to. The purpose of this plan was to replace the whole Bedoon population as an economic unit. Clearly, as educated citizens, such Arabs would have no genuine or practical need to immigrate to Kuwait and acquire Kuwaiti citizenship. Initially, the policy was derived from a desire for ethnic exclusion of the northern Bedouin tribes of Kuwait, and yet the intellectuals who created the policy had no idea what they would actually do with the discarded Bedoon population. Once these intellectuals and the state saw the opportunity of the invasion of Kuwait by Iraq in 1990, they conspired to exclude and ethnically cleanse the Bedoon. This is patently obvious from the statements made by the ruling family of Kuwait, which packed greater intellectual firepower than the ruling family was capable of mustering, when publicly ordering the ethnic cleansing and purification of the population of Bedoons in the 1990s under the guise of labelling them Iraqis. Moreover, the same intellectuals who had contributed to the initial stages of the policy of racist exclusion of the northern tribes Bedouin, who became the Bedoon, worked hand in hand with the government in exile, including advisory positions to the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Information, when the ethnic cleansing was ordered by the ruling family. In other words, the ruling family and the government of Kuwait itself were never capable of coming up with the violent Bedoon policy themselves. The policy was introduced by nationalist intellectuals on the behalf of the merchant class, and as I will discuss in a few moments, British foreign policy makers also appear to have played their hand in the development of the policy. In the second cable, number 4514A of November 2006, Matt Tuller, formerly in the Embassy of Kuwait, ambassador to Yemen and now ambassador to Iraq, described the government erasure of the Bedoon 3 years later. By this stage, the US Embassy was aware the state of Kuwait forced the Bedoon to buy fraudulent passports and then required the Bedoons to turn those passports in to the Ministry of Interior to help it construct the fraudulent identity records, which was kept on Bedoon security files. Matt Tuller described the program as so out of control that the situation had become ridiculous. His words. Tuller described the agency pasting posters on the walls of its offices, supplying the phone numbers of human traffickers who would supply the fake passports to the Bedoon. Bizarrely, the Bedoon even reported being given money by the Ministry of the Interior to buy the passports from the traffickers, which then had to be paid back to the security apparatus. Because the Bedoon had already lived in poverty imposed by the state since 1986, the strategy merely functioned to psychologically oppress them even further. The program of erasure officially began in 1983, or perhaps even earlier. The state simply began recording the Bedoon population, to which it had never granted citizenship from the time it gained independence from Britain, as nationals of other states on its official government records. The program of forcing fake passports on the Bedoon was used to switch the population, who had until then been listed on the national census of Kuwait as Kuwaiti Bedouins, to supposed citizens of other states. Authors still disagree on exactly when the expulsion from the national census actually happened, either Arabs. In the early stages of the fake passport scandal, the Bedoons bought passports from a range of unlikely countries, such as Bolivia and the Dominican Republic, because the documents were cheap for either themselves or the government of Kuwait to buy in the Middle East. The program was accelerated after the Arab Spring, and after the state of Kuwait had claimed to provide the Bedoon with 11 human rights reforms in Decree 409 of 2011, which would also turn out to be a fake policy. The program was accelerated to funnel the group into specific Arab nationalities to distribute them so they would no longer be traced. This would enable the government to make the whole population disappear by death or deportation. The UK Home Office, the US Department of State, the Australian Government, the governments of Canada and New Zealand, all states of the United Nations Security Council, and a range of other states are now aware of this program. All have failed to pressure Kuwait to end the program. One of the reasons for this appears to be that, although those states have known the erasure has existed for years, the facts involving the erasure of identity have been minimised, glossed over, or ignored by international humanitarian organisations and academic scholars worldwide. It is normally the role of international humanitarian NGOs to conduct fieldwork and collect evidence of such crimes. NGOs have still visited Kuwait, but they have not attempted to collect this evidence, even though they have certainly had the capacity to do so. Additionally, as academics specialising in Kuwait area studies have failed to study the Bedoon in depth, despite the subject screaming for their attention, they instead repeated Kuwait government policy on the identity of the Bedoon. Scholars never seriously attempted to conduct detailed historical research of the problem prior to my work in this field. The program was accelerated after the Arab Spring and after the state of Kuwait had claimed to provide the Bedoon with 11 human rights reforms in Decree 409 of 2011, which would also turn out to be a fake policy. The program was accelerated to funnel the group into specific Arab nationalities to distribute them across the population in the national census so they would no longer be traced. This would enable the government to make the whole population disappear by death or deportation. The UK Home Office, the US Department of State, the Australian Government, the governments of Canada and New Zealand, all states of the United Nations Security Council, and a range of other states are now aware of this program. All have failed to pressure Kuwait to end the program. One of the reasons for this appears to be that, although those states have known the erasure has existed for years, the facts involving the erasure of identity have been minimised, glossed over, or ignored by international humanitarian organisations and academic scholars worldwide.